So, Laura, on this episode, I'd like to talk about how we as leaders create the right culture within our teams. I'm sure you've heard of the projection reflection principle, which talks about what we project out in terms of role modelling. I know we've talked about role modelling on a previous episode, but what we project out is also reflected back to us. Yeah, so there's a correlation between how we behave as leaders and what we get back. So I'm keen to explore your thoughts and expertise and examples of how you create a culture in your environments in the care sector, and especially around that creating that openness and transparent culture, which what I'm wondering is extremely important in your context. So,
Definitely, yeah, and I think it's all about visible leadership. I have to make sure I'm out there, and I'm not out there all day, every day. I physically can't be, but it's having those meaningful times when I'm visibly out there
Yeah.
and demonstrating the values and the culture, making sure that I'm completely open and transparent. And I'll say to my team, what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
I will tell you what I think. As I said in a previous episode, I don't do fluffy. I will be firm, but I'll be very fair, and I will set the standard, and I will expect them to be open and honest and transparent with me. And I always instill right from interview stage, don't ever be afraid to speak up. Don't ever be afraid to say to me, I think I've seen something that's not quite right. Ultimately, within the care sector, safeguarding in particular is very, very important. And we have to create that culture where everybody feels safe, team, the residents, and that they feel comfortable in reporting and speaking up.
Absolutely, I can see why that's absolutely critical, and but I think saying it and it happening perhaps aren't necessarily always go hand in hand. So, how do you actually create that environment where people do feel okay at speaking up? Because there might still be that little bit of I'm not quite sure because I've never seen anybody else speak up before. So, what's going to happen? So, how do you actually create that? Because I don't know.
I think you have to create psychological safety. You have to say
Yeah.
to them, you're in a safe place. You can tell me what you may have seen, what you think you've seen, and that I will investigate and I will find out if it actually happened. If it didn't and something was just taken the wrong way, or you saw something that didn't actually happen, then we will have that discussion. It's all about, it's not being punitive. It's not saying, oh, well, you can't report, or, it'll be a bad mark on your record, if you like. It's making sure that they're protected and that they're believed.
And I don't. It all sounds great in kind of theory, and I 100% get that. And I'm just thinking about how do we as leaders and managers kind of demonstrate that that is okay? So is it about sharing examples? Is it a best practice? Is it about sharing examples of when we've learnt something because somebody has been open and honest and talked freely? Or I don't know. I'm just trying to think about how do we actually do that?
What I do is I basically have it as a standing agenda item on each meeting I do, whether that's my daily flash meeting or my monthly staff meeting or my heads of department meeting.
Yeah.
I'll talk about any issues that have been raised, and I'll say, we're not in a punitive society here in this environment. It's all about lessons learned. What could we have done better? What prevented people from speaking up earlier? I've been, as you said previously, parachuted into homes where they've had significant issues, all because people were afraid to speak up,
Yeah.
because the finger would then be pointed at them, or well, they went and said what had happened when it had been swept under the carpet for so long. And it's creating that safety within the team where they'll say, I think I've seen something. I'm going to speak to Laura because I know she'll do something about it. I don't want them to ever be afraid of reporting it, and I don't want them to start to be worried when they're on shift because they've seen something, and then they're terrified to go and work with that person who they may have seen doing something inappropriate. So it's making sure that the culture, and that it's on every meeting agenda, and that it's part of their daily routine, if you like.
Yeah. Because I'm sure all organisations in kind of the health and social care space will have policies in place around safeguarding, but a policy isn't always practice, is it? As we know. So I guess that's what I'm kind of aiming at, really, thinking about how do we actually make that policy become reality, and it's through role modelling the right behaviours and making sure that you know, people do feel comfortable to do that.
Yeah, and we'll have mini bite-sized training sessions
Yeah.
where we'll give them a scenario. Myself and the deputy will be a member of staff and a resident, and we'll say to them what was wrong with that scenario.
Right.
What would you have done? What would your first instinct be? Do you go and talk to your colleague and say, I don't think that was right? Or do you come and speak to the deputy or the manager and say, actually, I've just seen something that I know is not right? And then they have that ability and they feel comfortable in being open. And we promote it daily within the home. Every home I've ever worked in, it's promoted daily. It's an open culture. You can tell me anything, you know.
What would make you think or believe that it wasn't actually working, or you didn't have that culture? What would make you think? Would it be silence? Would that, if people aren't coming to you, is that by definition?
Yeah, I'd have nobody coming and saying, actually, I've seen something, or people's behaviours would change.
Yeah.
You know, they would be kind of running away and avoiding me when I walk onto the unit, or it'd be very quiet. The atmosphere would change.
Yeah.
We've got a really friendly, relaxed atmosphere in every home I've ever worked in. We've managed to establish that, and I can tell. That's just gut instinct. I think with years of experience, can tell that there's something not quite right. And then at that point, I would speak to each of the members of the team that was on shift that day and say, "Is everything okay? What's the matter? What's wrong? I can see something's not quite right. Speak to me. Come and speak to me in the office, or let's go in and speak in another room, out of earshot if you don't want to speak in front of anybody." And I'll always take what they say seriously and investigate it.
Yeah. And certainly from my experience of management and leadership, I always think if something is too perfect, then it's probably not. You know, so every organisation, every team at some point will make a mistake, because it's impossible to not do that. So if everything's 100% hunky-dory all of the time, that makes me curious about maybe digging a little bit deeper.
Well, that actually rings alarm bells for me, because, you know, having worked in many, many homes over the years, there is no such thing as a perfect home.
No.
And if you get an audit feedback that says you've had no complaints for 6 months, they've either
really?
not been reported or you're not reporting on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would be very worried if I didn't have some kind of concern or issue raised by a member of the team on a fairly regular basis. And 9 times out of 10, it's not a genuine concern. They're just not sure what they've seen is right.
Yeah.
But I'd rather they over-reported than under-reported, or didn't report at all.
Yeah, I can see how having no complaints would be more worrying than having complaints.
Yeah, and I know from a regulatory perspective, the regulators in each of the countries would be very concerned if there was no complaints recorded in a care home over a period of 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
They would then go start digging and looking.
Yeah. So in terms of top tips then, what are some of the summary tips of advice here in terms of how do you create that right culture which has a focus on safeguarding? How would you break it down into maybe your top 2 takeaways?
I think starting right from interview stage, letting them know that safeguarding is part of our daily routine, and that I want them to feel comfortable in reporting anything that they see or they think they may have seen, and not to be afraid. You know, speak up.
Okay. And if things go quiet, then it's probably a sign that
I need to go and do some
safety.
investigation. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. Once again, great insights. Thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you.
Really useful. Thank you.